The best free kick takers will spend hours upon hours perfecting their craft and honing their skills on the training ground. But even then, finding the corner of the net or successfully deceiving a goalkeeper, with tens of thousands of fans watching on and a towering opposition wall stood in front of you, is no easy task. Subscriber Dilo recently suggested that I take a look at the best free kick takers to have featured in the Premier League. But the best, by what measure? Goals scored? Conversion rate? Style? What about assists from free kicks and balls into the box? There are a number of different criteria. And the biggest takeaway that I found whilst coming up with my 7 is that just about every player you can think of who you might consider to have been, or still be, a free kick specialist probably scored fewer direct free kick goals than you think. The reality is that whilst they often stand out as goals, the very fact that they are so special and last in our minds means that we trick ourselves into thinking that they happen far more often than they actually do. Just take Dimitri Payet, who I felt sure would make my 7. Payet only actually scored 3 goals directly from free kicks, which, while still a decent record during his short time in the division, is still fewer than the likes of Sean Maloney and Ricky Lambert. For 3 or 4 months, I do believe that he was one of the Premier League's best ever free kick takers, and that his free kick against Crystal Palace is among the finest in the history of the division. But despite my initial leaning towards him, in the end he just missed out. Anyway, I've tried to combine all of those factors that I mentioned, so goals, deliveries into the box, consistency, and so on and so forth. So without further ado, here are my 7 best Premier League free kick takers of all time. Cristiano Ronaldo. The most difficult player to rank, and to decide whether he should feature at all, if we were going on Cristiano Ronaldo's prowess from set pieces now, he wouldn't touch the top 100. However, the reality is that whilst many aspects of Ronaldo's game have improved as the years went on, his free kick taking peaked during his time at Manchester United. Ronaldo had a particular penchant for the famed knuckleball technique during his first stint at Old Trafford, where he could sometimes balloon the ball almost out of the ground, but when it came off, such as that legendary strike against Portsmouth, they were virtually unstoppable. Ronaldo's record in terms of free kick goals per minute is actually pretty good, having struck once every 1,322 minutes prior to rejoining the club. Of course, that figure has already, and is likely to get worse, unless Ronaldo starts scoring from free kicks again back at the club. But his 11 direct free kick goals still puts him joint 4th in terms of the most goals from free kicks during the Premier League era. Ronaldo rarely took free kicks that presented anything other than shooting opportunities, so he doesn't score very highly in that regard. But the number of direct free kicks and the manner in which he scored them earned him a spot in 7th. Leighton Baines. Some of the greatest free kick takers of all time have been left-footed, and whilst I wouldn't quite put Leighton Baines into that bracket, he's certainly among the best that we have seen in the Premier League. A set-piece specialist ever since his days at Wigan Athletic, Baines' proficiency from dead ball situations were a real weapon at Everton for more than a decade. In terms of scoring directly from a free kick, Baines was not as prolific as Ronaldo on a per-game or per-minute basis in the Premier League. Though, it is worth noting that Baines shared free kick responsibilities during that time a lot more than Ronaldo did at Manchester United. In total, Baines scored 6 goals directly from free kicks for Everton in the Premier League, including 2 in a single game against West Ham as Everton came from behind to win 3-2. Baines also scored a 119th minute equaliser via a free kick for Everton against Chelsea in the FA Cup, which won Everton's 2010-11 Goal of the Season award. And his first goal for England, unsurprisingly, came via a free kick, neither of which show up in his Premier League statistics, of course. Irritatingly, for the purposes of this video, there doesn't seem to be any record of assists via free kicks in the Premier League, but if there were, I expect Baines would be close to the top of that one as well. A lovely crosser of the ball, Baines' consistency, when both shooting or delivering the ball into the box from free kicks, earns him a spot in 6th. And if there were more of an emphasis on the crossing aspect, he probably would have cracked my top 4. Thierry Henry. Thierry Henry was such a fantastic footballer, in so many respects, that his free kick taking probably isn't the first thing we think of when we think of him playing. For me, I think of Henry's speed, his control, and the way in which he would open up his body after drifting in down that left-hand channel and slotting the ball into the corner of the goal. However, Whilst it might not have been the single most memorable feature of his play, Henry was a real master when it came to set pieces. Only one player has scored more free kick goals in the entire history of the Premier League than Henry, who scored 12, and unlike Ronaldo, Henry didn't just score goals from free kicks, he also took them from wide areas as well. Though people often complained about it, a bit like with Didier Drogba, Henry often even took corners for Arsenal, such was his quality when putting the ball in the box. He even scored from a corner, directly, during his time with the New York Red Bulls. Henry's free kicks were varied from his screamer from range against Wigan Athletic to his quick-thinking free kick against Chelsea whilst Petr Cech was still organising his wall. Inventive, accurate, and among the most prolific free kick takers the division has ever seen, Henry had to feature, and I think fifth sits just right. Laurent Robert. A man who starred for Newcastle United during what were happier times for the club that they will be hoping to recreate over the next decade, Laurent Robert had an instant impact upon his arrival at St James's Park. Brought in from Paris Saint-Germain for £9.5 million in 2001, Newcastle finished 4th, 3rd and 5th during his first 3 seasons at the club, before slipping to 14th in his final season after Sir Bobby Robson retired. Robert became a cult hero at St James's, and for good reason, with his pace, direction, and particularly his ability from set pieces, proving to be a constant thorn in the side of Newcastle's opponents. The second left-footer in this 7, joining Leighton Baines, Robert was famous for his ferocious left foot, capable of tearing a hole in the net and sending a keeper flying. But not all of his goals relied solely on power. Robert was an equally proficient traditional free kick taker, capable of curling a ball up and over or around a wall, as well as blasting it straight through one. Robert has the best record in terms of free kick goals per minute of any player to have scored 10 or more goals from free kicks in the history of the Premier League, and he is the only player in that list to have averaged 1 free kick goal in under 1,000 minutes of football. So Robert takes 4th, and had he stuck around for more than 4 seasons, he'd almost certainly be the first or second highest free kick scorer in the history of the division. Gianfranco Zola. The Premier League's second highest free kick scorer, tied with Thierry Henry, Gianfranco Zola reached that tally in 29 fewer games than the Frenchman, averaging a free kick goal in the Premier League once every 1,339 minutes, compared to once every 1,776 minutes in the case of Henry. Zola learnt his free kick technique from one of the best, in the form of Diego Maradona at Napoli. Zola spent hours on the training ground, both watching and attempting to emulate El Diego's ability to curl a free kick into the back of the net. And you'd have to say, he did a pretty good job of it. Zola ended up scoring more Serie A free kicks than Maradona, an incredible 20 in total, putting him 5th in the all-time charts. Or at least, since records began, and every player above him in that list played more games in the division than him. Zola netted 12 times from direct free kicks at Chelsea in the Premier League, in addition to scoring a memorable set-piece against Barcelona in the UEFA Champions League. Unlike Robert, Zola rarely went for power, but his ability to curl the ball into the corner of the net is just about unrivaled in the history of the division. By every conceivable metric, from statistics through to the eye test, Gianfranco Zola is one of the Premier League's finest free kick takers, and his spot in 3rd reflects that fact. James Ward-Prowse. I know full well that to a lot of people this will seem ridiculous. Over 90% of people who aren't Southampton fans perhaps. But whilst James Ward-Prowse might not yet, and almost certainly will never be able to compete with the likes of Gianfranco Zola, Thierry Henry, and Cristiano Ronaldo in terms of all-round talent from set pieces in the Premier League, he is better than the lot of them. And this is a hill that I'm willing to die on. Ward-Prowse is a set-piece specialist in the truest sense of the term, since he is remarkably accurate, dangerous, and consistent from just about any position. His free kicks struck directly on goal have fantastic pace on the ball, and Ward-Prowse is capable of getting them up and down even on the edge of the box. Meanwhile, his deliveries from wide areas, from set pieces, are the best in the division. No one puts the ball into such dangerous positions, with crosses that are such nightmares to defend against, as often as James Ward-Prowse does from set pieces in the Premier League. His deliveries from free kicks in wide areas remind me a little bit of Kevin De Bruyne's crossing from those same positions in open play. and that is some compliment. WardProwse is also prolific when it comes to shooting from free kicks, and assuming that he spends the rest of his career at Southampton, or at least in the Premier League, he will most likely end up setting the record as the Premier League's top scorer from free kicks. He is already joint 7th in the all-time charts, aged 26, and his conversion rate is improving all the time. Since Opta started recording free kick conversion rates in English football's top flight in 2003, no player has a better record than WardProwse. But hey, even if you don't take my word for it, or the statistics, just listen to Pep Guardiola, who described WardProwse as the best free kick taker that he has seen in his life, which isn't bad going, coming from a manager who idolised Johan Cruyff, played alongside Ronald Koeman, and managed Lionel Messi. David Beckham. The greatest Premier League free kick taker, and it does not even come close, is David Beckham. James Ward-Prowse is the closest thing to him in terms of consistency, both when striking the ball on goal and delivering from wide areas, but Beckham's free kicks were perennially dangerous, and just had something different about them. There was an aura about Beckham when he placed the ball down and went to take a set piece. He knew he was special when he took them, everyone watching knew, and, perhaps most importantly, the goalkeeper knew as well. Beckham has scored more Premier League free kicks than anyone else, by a mile, with 18 in English football's top flight in total, whilst Henry and Zola are tied in second place on 12 apiece. Beckham also had a much better goals per game and per minute record from free kicks in the Premier League than those two, and one which is bettered only by Laurent Robert at Newcastle. Were there a record of assists from free kicks kept, I would be amazed if Beckham didn't top that list as well. And all this is in spite of the fact that he left English football during the same summer that he turned 28, never to return, and some of his best free kicks, or at least some of his most memorable, were scored or delivered outside of the Premier League. Beckham had a wonderful ability to curl the ball unlike almost anyone else, in addition to the fact that he was fairly relaxed about aiming to go up and down over the wall, or putting a bit more pace on the ball and aiming towards the keeper's side. That kept goalkeepers on their toes and reluctant to commit, since they never knew where the Englishman would plant the ball. Meanwhile, everyone knew what to expect from his deliveries from wide areas, but actually stopping them was a whole other question. Beckham's most famous free kick was probably his strike for England against Greece, which saw England qualify for the 2002 World Cup. Meanwhile, in the Premier League, you can just about take your pick between that brilliant free kick from range against Aston Villa to his famous free kick that came off the underside of the crossbar from close range against Liverpool in the 96-97 season. Becks is, without doubt, the Premier League's greatest free kick taker, and he is among the finest in the history of any league, country, or club. So that is it for today's video, but thank you all very much as ever for watching. Hit the like button if you enjoyed it, let me know your thoughts down below in the comments, and make sure that you are subscribed, obviously. I mean, just goes without saying at this point, and have notifications turned on for HITC Sevens. You can also find me on social media, on Twitter or Instagram via the username at HITC Sevens on both, should you wish to do so.